let's have a serious conversation here. I think you might be overcomplicating this whole active learning thing a bit too much. You've heard this a few times, right? Use active methodology, active learning, engage your students, that's better. But have you stopped to try to do this? It's full of details, very tiring, requires a lot of planning, sometimes a lot of technology too, right? By the way, comment down here, let's start this discussion. Have you tried implementing it? What is stopping you from using active learning in your classroom? Let's use the comments here on Teachy's video to exchange ideas and help more teachers. Hello, everyone. I am Mate Borsato from Teachy, which is the artificial intelligence platform made for teachers. And welcome. This is one of our first videos here on YouTube. For 14 years, I have been connecting creativity with education. I create innovative strategies to capture attention and engage the real students. My life's mission is to transform learning into inspiration, and that's why I'm here. I want to inspire you. I don't want you to copy everything I say. I want you to add your own flavor, your secret sauce. So in this video, I thought about doing quick and simple techniques, low effort, high impact to transform your classroom without making you more overwhelmed, okay? Because after all, we exist to make all of this faster for you. Everything I'm going to show you here is linked in the description. It's free and you can just save it too, whenever you want, okay? Oh, and look, until the end of the video, I will show you how these techniques can be used from students, young children, to medical students, NASA engineers. I don't know what subject you teach, put it in the comments too. There's no age limit and the idea is to keep it simple, okay? Because I think you might be overcomplicating this active learning thing a bit. You probably impacted by many ideas and alternatives and methodologies and everything else. But it's kind of your fault, right? That in fact, it becomes very difficult to find the simple in a sea of super elaborate things to do. I believe, Teachy believes that you don't need to change your entire class structure, nor throw away your way of teaching, your charisma, all the content you know, your way of giving a class. Because active learning is about planning and adapting what you already do well. It's good, it increases engagement, helps with reasoning, improves students' memory. But there are many myths going around, right? That you need gadgets, tablets, flipped classroom, how am I going to do this mega preparation for the students? You don't need any of that. It's nice, but actually there are many other simple things for you to start using active learning in the classroom. Active learning is about what students do with the content. It's when the student starts to take action, they stop being just a repository of your knowledge and begin to make decisions. They start to reflect on the content. So for example, older than walking backwards want to see group work is a way to implement active learning, but I won't talk about that one because you already know it well. So keep in mind that active learning starts simple, with movement, with a little chat. The student must have the power to choose, to make decisions. The student must be able to reflect. So shall we see some ideas? I'll bring here 3 techniques without much planning, without much that requires something like that, okay? And these are techniques that require almost nothing, like no major preparations and work in any classroom. The idea is for you to be able to plan 5 minutes that will change the atmosphere of the classroom. The first one is think, pair, share. It's just 3 little things in sequence. You will start with a question for your students that you have to ask, making the student think, It's not like memorizing and repeating like 2 times. It's not that, right? It's an open question, a question that requires reflection. Then you will give a few seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute for the students to reflect on this question. Then that's the think part, right? Then the pair, they will pair up with a student next to them, a colleague next to them, and they will discuss what they thought. After they have discussed what they thought, you can invite the pairs to speak. So what do you think you thought about this? I'll give examples, okay? To make it easier, you don't need to replan your class. It works within your planning. You don't need to redo it. But Mafe, it's very tiring to think about this class by class. Hold on, I said I was gonna bring a tool, right? Shall we test this with a water cycle, for example? I will take a class. It can be dance, it can be accounting, it can be biology, it can be geography, it can even be chemistry, right? If you're going to talk about the states of matter, chemistry, physics, evaporation, condensation, and all that, which I think I've already forgotten, I will bring the PIT tool to show how it can help you make a small plan for your class, a small replan, so you can have these ideas without losing your weekend, because that's not what we want. With activity ideas, but we already more or less know the activity we want, so I will go straight to generating a lesson plan The lesson plan, the water cycle, I chose my grade level. I will choose active learning. I will put the duration of the class, and I will put exactly the dynamic idea we talked about here.
We then have a fully generated lesson plan with active learning because you can already see that we start with problem situations. We introduced the topic already with the situation and contextualization, some curiosities, and the question to ask at the beginning of the class. We also get an idea here of an experiment that the students can do, and after the experiment, a group discussion. Right after the groups return, go back to the theory, and we share reflections and conclusions, reconnecting with the theory and practice. The idea is not to grade it or anything, right? Because sometimes students might think, oh, but does it count for a grade? No, we're just discussing here. The idea is to put thinking into motion. So let's move on to the second technique, quick writing technique. It can be in the middle, at the end of the class, or at the beginning of the class too. For example, what was the most confusing part of today's class? You can ask this to the students to get very clear feedback, even to feel suddenly, at the beginning of a more content-heavy class, how they are with this topic, if they have an idea about this topic, you know? You will ask the student to write this down quickly. On paper, it can be a long essay, a sentence, even a post-it, because you limit. The long essays, it's meant to be straight to the point. And you can ask to collect and read them anonymously, or you can ask the students to go to the class and speak, allowing for a discussion, a debate, and you take the opportunity to do a review before the class ends. I think it's really cool to show that their opinion matters, you know, and bring them closer to you instead of just pushing them away. Technique number three is quite similar to silent discussions, right? It's a big silent discussion. And you can also work with those shyer students who don't want to expose themselves. Oh, I don't want to speak because I was unsure. That syndrome, right? Where the student can't have doubts or they'll be teased by classmates. In the silent discussion, you put some questions on the board and you ask them to write down and go there to deposit their thoughts on the board. And so they will be discussing, speaking, even without using their voice, right? But of course, it's a silent discussion, so it's also nice afterwards for you to mediate this discussion and bring the students to comment on what's there. So it's also an anonymous technique that shyer students can participate in properly. Now that you've planned the beginning, middle, and end of the class, it's time to start adapting what you already have and also bring in some more robust elements, right? It's not just about the discussion, talking in pairs. It's really about putting the student at the center to exercise, to be able to lead the class discussion. Wow, but am I going to have the student mediate? Not exactly. We're going to do role plays, mini debates. So imagine that you taught the French Revolution to the class, and then you want to know from them if they think Robespierre, the great head cutter, was a hero or a villain, a dubious character about whom you will probably have very opposing feelings and impressions from the students. And you will start to bring a discussion that goes beyond the core content, who were the Girondins, who were the Jacobins, and everything else. Another really cool thing is to get into character, do a role play. So you tell a story, give the context to the students, I don't know, about the Napoleonic Wars, and then you ask, okay, now I want a volunteer to be Napoleon. Napoleon is in the cold of the Russian winter with these conditions. What would Napoleon do? It's a very playful and very different approach compared to just writing on the board everything that people need to memorize about the French Revolution. Another really cool thing is peer teaching. So imagine you ask half the class to leave, half to stay, and you talk a little about the thinking of the Girondins. Then talk a little about the thinking of the Jacobins. That classic scene of the French Revolution, people on the left, people on the right. And you can have the class explain their thoughts and ideas on this, which can even turn into a mini debate at the end. Let's see this in practice, how you incorporate this into the lesson, how you plan your lesson effortlessly. I'm already here on the pitch.website website, and we have some ways to incorporate active learning into the lesson. The first one is directly in the lesson plan. So, you are already seeing what is happening in the planning. You can already see that we have a role-playing activity and a mini debate. It was optional and the planning provided too. In less than a minute, you already have your lesson plan with these ideas. If you have no idea of any example that we haven't given here yet, you can go straight to activity ideas. So, you go to the activity, ideas, you write the French Revolution, your subject, and what you need ideas for. Here, we are talking about active learning about the French Revolution. So, I will put the theme of my class and the materials I have. If you have other materials, add the materials, and you will see that some ideas are being generated in a few minutes. So, poster project, ALCA debate that we mentioned above, a simulation of the Bastille, a court simulation, a game. And if I like one of these ideas, I can simply copy and add it to my lesson plan. I can already directly include the idea. The preparation already with the game, the idea that I liked. So it's the entire planning of the French Revolution with the introduction already thought out and the discussion already planned for this game to take place. So did you like it? I will leave the link here in the description for you to enter and register for free so you can start doing this now. Especially because these ideas here I ended up pulling from my head, but we can draw from a place that has infinite possibilities for you to see what might be best for your class, because you know your class. And I think that's the most interesting part of active learning. When you combine these knowledge activation techniques with tools, for example, artificial intelligence to personalize what you know already works, or tell the artificial intelligence tool that you need ideas very focused on super specific context, which is your context. I want to know if you are enjoying these ideas. Leave a like on the video to show that this content is good for you, and also to reach more teachers who need this help, this little push. I think the big idea of this video is for you to be less of a lecturer and more of a mediator of knowledge. Of course, you don't need to do this in every class. You might consider doing this in classes with a much denser subject, or when you feel the class is apathetic, or when you need to even control a rowdy class, right? Where you will bring a different point of focus, within the classroom, that this can transform their attention and focus as well. For so many classes and for so many subjects you teach, you might think it's impossible to do this for all your classes. So use artificial intelligence to make that first draft for you. Then you add your touch, it's all right. I think that's the great insight of technology. And then I'm not talking about technology where each student needs to have a computer. It's not you. On your computer, in your preparation. And a well-rounded preparation that you can ask artificial intelligence for. It's important to remember that this is not just for children. I'm talking here about playful activities like acting or even debates. But actually, if you think about it, medical students, how do they learn? With real cases, folks. And there are the cases, right? A person is experiencing these symptoms and reported this, has been for so many days and so on. The medical student understands the context and actively asks questions, right? for you to think about the anamnesis, to consider what are the possible paths and solutions. NASA's own engineers, they are not in space all the time. So all teaching is based on problem solving. So a problem is presented to be solved, which could be that it never rains again for you to talk about the water cycle and the problem can be solved. What was the most complicated part of your class, as we discussed here? So it's very much about these big questions without direct solutions that will mobilize and foster these discussions. And then the main role of the teacher here is to guide these discussions, to delve into the lesson content, or to ensure that the lesson content has been conveyed according to the curriculum, necessary according to what is really needed there. The students should leave with, I'll say, ongoing, right? In the end, I'll leave a challenge. Let's start trying to implement this in your next class, tomorrow's class. Indeed. So think, reflect, what are the initial 5 minutes you can incorporate into your class? Use the title to help you think. Choose one of the techniques: think, pair, share, quick writing, silent discussion, even the mini debate, or the role play, the explanation among peers. Enter the title and add your touch, your creativity, and above all, your knowledge of your class. It's very important to consider that maybe tomorrow's first class won't be the most perfect class of all. But I think that's the cool part. The more you do it, the more you experiment, you'll end up understanding which paths the class tends to take. If the question you chose was open enough, or, I don't know, went in other directions and you couldn't bring the class back, I think it will become more and more fun and interesting. Even for you to give that class, for you to have that class, just like all the usual ones. And I think the students will teach you a lot because we can get into their heads and see what they are thinking about that topic, what page they are on regarding it, everything that is to be learned. The links are here in the description, the PIT link, free registration. I would really like you to help me by sharing this video with teachers who need to see this, who need more inspiration. We will always be here every week, so subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching until the end. A kiss, and see you next time.